Just welcome to this amazing panel on escape rooms, puzzle rooms, and just getting the hell out of any room that you're trapped in. Today we have John Garcia with Perplexium, right here, round of applause. We have Danielle Harper with Reclaiming Earth, and the legend Riley Seaman with Perplexium as well.
Can I put the legend on my business card?
Yes, you can, because I said it and it is recorded as well.
In the world.
Everything on the internet is true. Okay, we're here to talk to you about the intersection of puzzle rooms and LARPing and how LARP design can inform puzzle room design and how puzzle room design can inform LARP design. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction as to who I am, and then these guys who belong to the same company will give you a quick introduction as to who they are. And then we'll field questions and talk about our experiences, and if you have any questions that we're super qualified to answer, we'll do what we can. So I'm Danielle Harper. I run a game called Reclaiming Earth. It is a science fiction LARP, and it relies heavily on investigation and puzzle solving. And so each event involves at least one puzzle room style investigation scenario. But it's a LARP. It's not a commercial event. I mean, commercial as much as LARPs are commercial, right? But it's not like I run this puzzle room, come pay me $20, run through my puzzle room every weekend, for the next 6 months, and then I make a new one. It's not that at all. Every event has a different scenario, and it's much shorter than your standard hour-long puzzle room that needs 10 people to solve. It's more like 30 minutes for 5 people. If you've got 10 people, it may only take 5 minutes. It may take way longer because you're arguing about what to do because you're all playing characters.
Oh, we can go into that.
Oh, yeah. All right, so.
So my name is Riley. I am I call it the lead designer at Perplexium. I have decade some odd experience in live action role playing as well, and I can talk about how John and I both brought our experience from that into creating an escape room experience, which is a commercial venture called Perplexium here in Austin. Did anyone who was here do Perplexium at the Week in Austin thing? Well, you've been there, yeah. All right, cool. So both of you guys did. Awesome, cool. We started Perplexium. We opened October 31st, and we've been doing it ever since. Day-to-day operation and stuff in the background. But the majority of my experience is in doing that. I also helped start a sci-fi LARP called Planetfall, which we have a lot of.
Yeah, we do.
I'm John Garcia. I've been doing Perplexium with Riley. We're both founders with that. Before that, we actually both worked on Heroic Interactive Theater Austin, just a kind of a generic fantasy game I was doing as a hobby, and brought Riley in to write some plot for me.
So much more than a generic fantasy game. It was an experience.
When I started, it was very generic. That's why I needed help.
Generic fantasy.
But it operated very smoothly.
Problem being is it wasn't paying bills, so I was looking actively for something that I could commercialize, make a little bit of profit instead of losing money every month. And so when I played my first puzzle room, and I'm like, this is amazing, and we should make it accept as a LARP, a 1 hour LARP that people can come play and trick them into thinking it's not a LARP.
Yeah, because if you tell people hey, come play a LARP, you guys, it's hey, we're official and we have a business and stuff, but it's a LARP. They'll tell you no. And if they go through the experience, and then at the end you say, "Ha, it was a LARP, I gotcha," then they'll say, "No, I didn't LARP," and they'll walk out the front door.
I wasn't pretending. No.
Essentially what almost 80% of our police training is LARP.
Is LARP.
But I am not allowed to go to the police academy and say we are LARPing this. They will shoot me in the kneecap. But yeah, the LARP is everywhere, and what I see, and what I'm following, following the escape room stuff, because I have such with Scare for Cure, my charity, and Plus and everything, I see that team building, corporate team building, if you wanna try to make an income from this, because everybody, admit it, you got an electric bill to pay. Everybody's gotta pay the electric bill. It is our passion, but passions don't always pay the electric bill. Team building-esque type stuff, like what y'all are talking about, that's gonna be a way to go.
We kind of wanted to actually just prove out even that it could run, right? That Larp can.
It's feasible.
Because our experience in the past had been, my literal saying is Larp is a hole that you throw money into and maybe get some fun out, right?
Like most hobbies.
Like most
Yeah,
hobbies.
I would beg to
Yeah.
differ.
Yeah.
LARP is a hole you can throw money in and eventually get money right back out of, but
Yes, you can,
can.
and that's
You
the point,
can.
is that we wanted to prove out that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
just say like, no, it definitely works.
So, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about with kind of the intersection between LARP and escape room is how you design, like how design goes into that, right? So, you know, when you're designing a LARP, you think of a scenario, you think of a setting, you think of characterization, you give like players agency in interacting with your world, and you give them some constraints, and you know, you set up a rule set for how those things work, be it free form or parlor style or boffer style or whatever millions of different styles there are, and you have a conceit. But in escape room, you know, you can, and you know, I've been in puzzle rooms where you can literally carve all that off and just have the scenario, right? So, you know, how do you, because I know how I integrate puzzle room into LARP design, because it's easy. Part of my scenario involves solving a puzzle. A lot of them.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything else, even within the mechanics of the game, until you solve these puzzles. And the mechanics of the game interact with those puzzles in the way that, you know, the game has been designed to interact.
Yeah.
But, so when you're designing an escape room, how do you LARPify that?
Can I actually touch on something you were saying?
Yeah.
Just saying, I'm really curious about how do you identify the things that are like, I can't get past this point until, because I really like that, where it's I'm going through a story and I've got all these superpowers because I'm a LARP character, and now I don't have these superpowers. I can't use my superpowers to get past this thing, right?
Okay, I have a couple of examples where we have done that kind of puzzle style in a LARP. So I'll use my more like a room style, and then I'll just give some like physical puzzles in LARPs, because they're kind of the basis form of a puzzle room, right? Is to see like a physical puzzle, and I can't mechanic my way out of this, right? So the most basic of I can't mechanic my way out of this is that there are no mechanics for the thing you're looking at. So I have all these superpowers. I can. LARPs are, there's actually very few like superhero mutant LARPs. They exist, but they're few and far between, because it's actually really hard to LARP having like
For that very reason.
It is very hard to LARP and represent having physical, you know, capabilities that you just don't have. And so yeah, but even like in a vampire LARP, right, where I have the ability to look at the aura of this container here and know where it's been and who touched it last, and I can tell you its history, who made it, I can tell you everything just by rolling a die really quickly. And now I'm going to LARP and knowing all this information. Or you know, doing paper rock scissors or whatever my mechanic is. So, okay, you know everything there is to know about that thing of water there, and that's great. But the mechanics of the puzzle are such that that's great, but until you pour all the water out of the cup, you can't actually read what's written at the bottom, right?
You also have a thing in the bottom of it.
Oh, right, so there's a note in the bottom, and until you physically pour everything out, you can't read it. So you can know, maybe your powers will inform you. I have aspects, what is special about this thing, and like, you see somebody making it, and you see them carving something, and it's on the inside and the bottom, but you can't see what they're carving. And so you give them that clue, like, oh, well, how do there's a crap ton of ice in there. Well, how would you read something at the bottom of a container,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I have to use the device before I can really understand
Right.
deeply what
Yeah.
it is. And,
Right.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
everybody
So-
drink some water really fast.
Yeah, so you can essentially, you have a physical thing in front of them, like you have a, you have an,
No, it's thirsty.
Yeah, I know.
I made myself thirsty.
so there's some LARPs where, a mechanic has to be gotten around. So in Dystopia Rising, there is a skill called unlock. You see something, there are in-game items that are locks.
That
You
would
see
kill
one of,
in an
right, it would kill in an escape room, like, well, that's locked, unlock. Screw finding the keys.
Which was one of
I
my
don't
favorite
even-
things going from LARP, like, because we know all those mechanics
Yeah.
and things like that, where it's like, no, you're using your powers or your thing
Yeah.
that you, and that, we had, so, and, if I'm cutting
No,
off before
no.
you get to a point, let me, stop me. But, I think that it was really interesting for us when we decided, like, okay, we're gonna do an escape room, right? Well, who are we dealing with? One of my friends likes to say this, and I don't know, it's not necessarily my personal opinion, but our customer is Homer Simpson. Right? Our customer,
That's
like,
beautiful.
I'll say,
Amazing.
if you've ever been to one of our scare meetings,
Yeah.
we have a brainstorm every year, and people throw all these ideas at me. I'm like, folks, okay, I love Lovecraft, okay?
Yeah,
But our base customer, 3rd grade,
yep,
yeah.
so
Well,
similar
and in literally
concept.
3rd graders too, sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
we have kids come into the escape rooms, and we have to figure out, like,
What appeals to your customer base?
what's appealing to them. Because, you can't tell them ahead of time, like, oh, you've got this power you can use once per game. That will unveil they don't care.
Or study this book
Yeah.
on physics before you come to my show.
right.
You know, you
Oh,
can't do
yeah,
those
any of
things.
that, yeah. So what we ended up, like, all of the things that we designed had to have that approach to it from the get-go, was we want the average person to be totally capable of coming in and feeling a really solid experience and say, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I got to do the other thing, you know? And sometimes people monopolize, but that happens in life too, so you can't design around that.
No.
And I just want to inject,
Yeah.
because my organization has to make money, otherwise we have these breast cancer survivors standing up at the end of the year
Right.
wanting the big check, and I
Right.
have no big check.
Right.
I have to appeal to as broad an audience as possible.
Exactly.
So if you're my design team,
Right.
you think, oh my God, it's gonna be cool to do this 400-foot zip line. And we need a laser grid that they have to flip-flop over, and and yes, I want y'all to enjoy it because I need your buy-in to
But-
help put on this production.
Exactly.
But you have to gear towards your customer, not what we think is cool, because frankly, I think everyone in this building right now, we're a little bit nerdier than the average person. I'm
Right.
gonna say it.
We're the nerds who direct other nerds for crying out loud.
So
Like,
we don't always
create
get to
games.
do what we want to do because we have a bottom line and have to pay the electric bill.
Where in my scenario, I actually don't have that problem,
Oh,
because
sure,
everybody
yeah.
who's coming into my LARP are the uber nerds, and they're the people who are like, LARPing,
And so
Yeah, the
your,
And so-
your participants, you
so-
can actually assume that they know the entire backstory of your
That'd be
world.
nice.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because my participants, even if they're brand new, have some kind of coaching. They either read a rule book or their friend has been goobing about this thing to them for the past 2 months. Please come out and play this game with me. It's so amazing, and this is what we get to do, and this is so cool. And so they have some prehistory before they show up, to where they understand the setting. And so there's a lot of conceit about, I can just toss out the window where I don't have to set up as much scenario building into each individual puzzle, right? Like the other example I was going to give about so Dystopia Rising I can't put a physical lock with a key and hide the key somewhere because one of the players will be like, I have a lock. I wish to unlock this thing, and then they will because that's how their mechanic works. And as a person running a game, you have to 100% let their power work. You can't shut their power off just for the conceit of your one thing. No, you should just design something different. So we did 2 things. We designed a scenario where there was essentially a disease going around town. and it was supernatural in nature. And to investigate and research the disease, the players had to solve a physical 3D puzzle. And once they solved the physical 3D puzzle, they brought the 3D puzzle to the, the operations area. They got it was always like a crystal. So they got a colored crystal that matched the puzzle they just solved to represent their completed puzzle. And now that they've got this completed crystal, they can investigate the crystal and find out how it's linked to the disease. This is not a mechanic normally in the game. It is a completely made up thing, and it's got a physical puzzle element, and they are made very aware that the only way to follow the plot and solve the puzzle is to solve this puzzle, right? And so, okay, then we did another scenario where we were trying to mimic Saw. This is Dystopia Rising is a kind of horror survival game, and there's a group of people that religiously believe in the broadcasts of the television, and in October they like to come out and mimic horror movie, horror bad guys to try to make a hero out of somebody. And we were like, how do we do Saw? How do we do that? He likes to put people essentially in escape rooms.
There's
horrifying.
That's where the idea.
Yeah.
Right. He puts people in horrifying escape rooms and makes them murder each other to get out. How do we do that in this game? Because a lot of that is you're chained to a thing with a lock. Well, if they have unlocked, they just unlock the thing. You can't do that in this game. So
You swallow the key, you must cut it out of his stomach.
right.
Yeah.
No, because I have the unlock skill. I have luck control all the time. It's just the way it works, right? So
Unlock his stomach.
So, but there's a part of the game, there's a part of the mechanic of the game that if you go, essentially if you're near death, which was called bleed out, you lose the ability to use any skills. You cannot use unlock, you can't even use your weapon. You cannot. You can be stabilized, you're no longer dying, you're no longer bleeding to death, but you are still in that state of incapable of using any skills. You are now helpless, so to say, until you find somebody to patch you up and give you some health back. So, the conceit was, just like in most Saw movies, people wake up in their situation and are like, oh crap, these people got beaten up, knocked out, beaten up, put in a bleed out, patched up just enough to not be able to use any skills, chained together, and told, all right, this is what you gotta do to get out of this. And it was a huge conceit, but it worked specifically for that scenario. It would not work for other scenarios because it's just oh, they just keep putting us into this stupid, depriving us of all of our skills state just so that they can run us through puzzle rooms. That's annoying, right? Nobody wants to do with that. But with Saw, it worked. But there are better ways in LARPs. You really have to look at the mechanics available and try to design things that work with the powers, but also don't just deprive people of their ability to do power just because we have this cool puzzle.
Actually, what I would add to that say is I think doing an escape room wasn't a big leap for us, obviously, because all we really did was a campsite-wide escape room.
Yeah.
But with some physical combat and stuff involved, right?
Yeah.
So there was really a lot of things that overlapped there. Is things because you had the powers, they were all part of the thing, and honestly, we can also give people powers and things.
Yeah, sure, a
throughout.
one-time ability. Or...
Yeah. Well, actually, so what I mean is it's almost the same thing. What we do is through our authorization, right, as the people running the game, we give them a thing. And that's essentially what you do in a LARP is you say, all right, you can do this thing, right? Well, we do the same thing, and I figured this out at some point where we're giving them a thing, but what we're giving them is information. And that's their power. And that's your superpower in the escape room is having a piece of information. And the best thing is getting 10 people into an escape room and, like you said at the very beginning, having them all just ruin everything by not listening to one another. And you mentioned team building, that's why we're such a
Give
big
each of
team
them
building
one
thing.
critical piece of information.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
or all you have
See what they
to
do with it.
is leave the piece of information. I kind of want to spoil some of our stuff, but I don't
Don't
think
do
like,
it, don't do
no,
it.
I have to. I'm going to. But what, you guys did the spy room experience,
Yes.
right? Okay, I saw your bookings up for the week in Austin thing, so. So I won't spoil anything for you because we'll talk about that a little bit. Like, at one point we have, we made a thing that I've always wanted to make, which was a book safe. So we hollow out a book, and we put a bunch of books up on the bookshelves. So what you have to do in the very beginning is you have to ransack the room. And we reset between every show, but that's what you, so a lot of people are uncomfortable with that at first, so we have to tell them, we have to empower them and say,
Take all the stuff off.
do it, go
Touch
through,
everything.
touch everything.
We just
Yeah.
went in and ransacked.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, so you
Yeah.
had to go through and
You didn't
had
need
to
any
find
prompting.
people.
Larpers
Yeah.
will just go in.
We were
and
tearing
Yeah.
apart that room at the instant we got it.
To be fair, I do that with every room I go into.
Yeah.
You walk in
He's
the
a
room and
beast
You
at
just
dinner
left the
parties.
bathroom, didn't you? I saw everything just.
He's a beast at
Paper
dinner
towels
parties, man,
everywhere.
nobody wants to do
That
that.
actually reminds me of, there are actually some powers and abilities that normal people have coming into our facility
Yep,
that we do have to deprive them of.
Math.
Brute force.
Oh.
We're like, you could kick through the sheetrock or our gluon walls.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have to tell them specifically,
Yeah.
no, this
Please
is
don't
not
lift
within your
any
power,
things, yeah.
don't do
We're
that.
like, oh guys, you have to break into that room. Oh yeah, no problem.
no, please don't do that.
There's people who know how to pick locks,
Yeah, there are.
or jimmy them open without even picking them, and so we work around that, we try to make more magnetic locks, more solenoids, and hidden stuff.
Well, that was also, Perplexium is a little bit different from the average bear when it comes to escape rooms in that regard. And that was something we were pretty aggressive about up front, because we knew coming from Larp how this would change things, because we go into other escape rooms and we saw lots of physical locks and lots of physical this and that. And it's just called sequence breaking.
Yep.
You just, somebody, like at one point somebody just kind of jammed their arm into a container that we had, and he just pried the bottom of the container open and reached his arm in and grabbed a thing, and he's like, oh yeah, I got the phone, and we're like,
That
How-
was supposed to be in the last quarter of the room.
Yeah,
If you follow
you-
the
So you
sequence.
basically have to explain brute force is not the solution to
Yeah.
any of the puzzles.
Right.
and they still do it,
Yeah.
but they can still, it's to their detriment.
Yes.
And that's kind of what we have to say in LARP too, is like, if you cheat,
Yeah,
It's on you.
it's on you.
You're
just
ruining your own
fun
experience that you paid for.
and other people's fun, and you paid for this,
Did
yeah.
he know he was cheating?
Yeah.
yeah, most people do.
Okay, well then.
He still wanted to be a badass.
Most
Oh,
people
Is
do.
it? Yeah, so, but that was it,
Did you
like,
build a consequence in there to?
Well,
no,
he-
we let him do it, because
They had a slightly shorter experience than other people
Yeah.
because they want to relate.
it's kind of its own punishment, really. And we can't punish people for doing that, they'll leave us a one-star review, right?
Yeah.
Or
Well, I mean, that-
in LARP, they won't tell their friends or whatever.
Yeah, not-
But, like,
By
Yeah.
punish, I mean.
No, I
yeah,
get what you're saying.
we will talk.
In
after.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's a good
For
point,
him,
is,
there's, yeah,
yeah, and that's a good point, though, is it all has to, everything has to work as an organism, right? So like, lots of things play off one another. So I'll recommend two tools that I love. One of them is called Scapple, SCAPPLE. And all it is you double click and it gives you a little balloon. And you click on the balloon and you write some text. And then you make another balloon and then you link the balloons if they are linked ideas or objects, right? So it's very simple brain mapping thing, right? But it's one of the best ones I found because all of the other ones that I found are like very regimented in where you can put things and how you can link them, and you have to have a certain, like, all this other background stuff. It's just very freeform. Another one's called Scrivener, which I'm sure a lot of people use, but I absolutely love it. Okay, third called
What is
Scrivener.
okay,
Scrivener.
Scrivener, if you don't, yeah, if you're unaware of what
I should
Scrivener
really
is-
just say what the thing is that I
Yeah,
just said.
yeah, you should.
Scrivener is, it's actually made by the same company that makes Scapple, and Scrivener is, it's for novelists, essentially. That's who they made it for.
Okay.
But you can organize all of your documents in like a hierarchical view, and you can take notes and make cards and all sorts of other things. It's a very, very, very versatile tool.
A lot of
Mostly for
teachers use it
authoring.
too, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of teachers, that's actually a really good point, because they have to do lesson plans. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine.
It's got a robust, like, you can, you know, like, oh, this document's my introduction, or this document's the first part of this thing, and you can make like sticky notes that are attached to specific pages, or sticky notes that are attached to different areas, or just when you open this part of it, and then, you know, you can tab between all the different documents that you've got all in one, and it like opens them all at once.
If you're doing a slideshow, you can make a notation,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
text
On the
links
side.
to that slide, so
Yep.
if I need to refresh myself. it's-
Yep.
Yeah,
It's very robust.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
very
super
good,
robust.
very good tools for working in interconnectivity.
Brainstorming.
Because you need a lot of
Yeah,
that.
it's good for
Um,
brainstorming, yeah.
Yeah, and it's, well, so, and in this case, what we did was, you see, in Scapple, you can do directional arrows as well.
Mhm.
So we literally have scapels posted on our wall for the proctors, who are the people who run our shows, to see the flow of the room. So this leads to that, leads to that, leads to that, leads to that, requires this, sorts of things. And luckily, the thing with the phone is you also need to sort out another thing before it can actually get you into the next room.
Right.
So that was our one saving grace that just didn't just kill it
Right.
right then and there. You know.
Yeah.
I actually have a question. Can I ask questions?
Yeah.
Great.
Oh yeah, this is a round table and you're
Yeah.
welcome to just pop up.
Yeah.
So, I have a question about play testing. How often, what methods do you use to play test your puzzles, and how frequent, how much do you play test your puzzles?
Great question.
Do you want to do yours first?
So for me, for Larp puzzles, we come up with a puzzle, so it's not as, it's clearly not as robust as an escape room. I'm not coming up with an hour's worth of puzzles. In fact, timing on my puzzles in Larps are very often inconsequential. If it takes them 4 hours to solve this puzzle, it takes them 4 hours to solve this puzzle. Whatevs. I don't have time constraints in my Larp.
Would you also say that most of your puzzles only have to be solved once?
Usually, most of our puzzles only have to be solved once. And so it's the puzzle is the kind of like the key to what is going on, and it's usually plot related. And so, you know, whatever the plot is, makes sense to have a puzzle in it. There's very rarely, I'm walking through the hallway and there's a random puzzle on the floor, and I'm going to solve it for the fun of it, and then I'm gonna keep going, just cause no reason at all, right? There's a reason for the puzzle. And so, usually, I like to either, if I'm gonna come up with a puzzle, right? So a puzzle, not like, this thing is locked and I'm gonna go hide the key somewhere, right? Cause that is a form of puzzle, but it is not.
It's just a mechanic.
It's a mechanic. It's a mechanical puzzle versus like, I'm gonna design a cryptogram, right? Cryptograms are great, I love them.
Yeah.
And they're especially great in LARP, not as fabulous in escape rooms because of time constraints,
Or
right?
cryptograms?
Yeah,
No, actually, so we use them and we love them.
okay.
Yeah.
I
But-
love them.
but
We
that's
can't
the thing.
overly
You
rely
can't-
on
you
them.
can't- yeah.
Right, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not. No, especially because there's a particular type of person which we can get into it.
Wait, anyway,
Yeah.
so, right, so for me, what I do is I'll usually, either, I will do the puzzle myself, especially if it's a mechanical puzzle, like we have tons of 3D puzzles. Holy crap, you buy them on the internet and they show up and they're just little pieces and I'm like, can I put this together? How long does it take me? And are all the pieces there? Because sometimes the answer is no.
Oh, this is the best.
Yeah, so,
It's all a
so.
practical joke, not a puzzle.
So I put them together, and then, okay, it can be put together, all the pieces are there, great, I'm done. I'm just gonna throw it in my alarm. Does it work? That's my play test. Sometimes if it's timed, like for this event, I have essentially a puzzle room for Reclaiming Earth, and I was like, well, it's timed, they've only got 2 hours of this event, and so if it takes them 4 hours, they're probably gonna be really sad at me. I should make sure it doesn't take 4 hours to solve. So I invited some people to my house, and I said, all right, solve these puzzles. How long did it take? All right. So yeah, for me, playtesting isn't as important on the puzzle end.
For ours, we have two aspects of the playtesting. First, we have mechanical, the hardware. Is the hardware functioning? Is it not breaking? Can they not just bend a piece and get around it? And so that is easy for us to do because we can, beat on it, and if it breaks, we fix it right then, or reinforce it, whatever it takes. And then the other aspect is the informational part. Like, once you have all the pieces required to solve the puzzle, do you know what you need to know to put it together? And that's the tricky part. Well, we can drop additional clues, hide them throughout the room, drop them as rewards for solving other puzzles, and the information can be like, oh, there are X number of these pieces. If you don't have all X of them, you're not going to get through. Or, hey, have you looked at the connection between these two items? And then it makes a light bulb go off in their head, and they're like, oh, those are linked. Now I can actually put them together, find a way for them to work together, and then solve it.
Yeah, I think it's, for us especially, and I think this really applies to Larp too. A brief war story, super brief war story, I promise.
Go for it.
I was so bad with these, but.
No, it's okay, I have tons of them.
Yeah. So we played a game called Aftermath. I remember on the first weekend we did it in a haunted house, best freaking event. What we ended up doing, we're going through this haunted house thing. There's a part where we get to where it's, oh no, you're being attacked and somebody has to solve a puzzle while you're being attacked, which is kind of a frequent thing to do. But the guy who's solving the puzzle, it's a puzzle ring. I don't know if you ever put a puzzle ring together. The person who put the puzzle ring together took the instructions and said, this is doable, and put it in the room. So when we got to the puzzle ring, we were fighting for about 2 hours trying to keep them alive so that they could solve the puzzle. And he kept getting hit and knocked over, and so he'd be like, and it would fall to pieces. And be like, God! So it was really frustrating, right? So they did not play test that very clearly beforehand. And we had a couple things where the timing was just super off. And we had to, now we were pretty good about assuming some things, but there were a lot of conclusions that people did not jump to that we thought they would, right? And even still, there are things that just people won't jump to, but we're lucky enough to have the proctors, and in a Larp, you're usually lucky enough to have an NPC or somebody who's there, who you have to figure out. And I think one of the most important things, especially if you're in the intersection here where you're trying to keep people immersed in the experience, is you have to know how are you going to just kind of nudge them in the right direction. Because if we say, hey, you should check behind the bookcase.
Bookcase!
Or worse, and we have seen other places do this, send in an employee, not a character, but an employee.
I did an escape room in Montreal where to get a hint in the room, you had to wave your arms at the camera like an idiot until you think they saw you, because they can't signal you as to whether or not they saw you. So you're just sitting here doing this, and then the guy, like some just dude in jeans, walks into your like mad scientist laboratory and is like, hey, did you do that? Okay, what? Like he wasn't even watching us.
Have you played, did you play Quest Night?
That's beautiful.
Yes, I actually volunteered for Quest Night at the beginning.
So at Quest Night, it's a LARP I do. It's a D&D LARP, very puzzle room heavy. You can buy magic tokens, magic spells. Well, one of your magic tokens is called Inspiration. And it's a hint.
Yes.
And so every room is mic'd. And so I have one person in the control room watch the cameras. Yes, it took us several years to get to this level. But basically,
Maybe one day.
in puzzle rooms, the cameras are reverse mic'd.
Right.
So we can hear what's happening in the room, and all they have to do is say, and to do any spell, cast light or whatever, I cast my inspiration because we're frickin' idiots. And then the gods take pity on your ignorant soul. Look behind the red stone.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's actually
so
a
keep
really
it
good point.
in story, even
Yes.
if it's a veneer.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Even if it's a veneer.
All you're doing is
Try.
you're not stretching their suspension of disbelief.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have, the best thing that I think we've done is figured out and trained our proctors to word things in such a way that they feel like they made the win, even if they didn't.
Yeah. No one likes to get paid to lose.
Nobody likes to get paid to lose, yeah.
I can give you an example of this from what happened in your escape room.
Okay, I want to know how.
We had solved it with 15 minutes to spare.
Okay.
But we did need one hint from the proctor, who there is a button that is somewhere on a bookcase, and there is a desk and it has drawers, and we had not figured out a connection between the two. So he gave us something like, there's there's a weird, we could not figure out what this button did. We were trying, there's a safe in the room, there are locked doors, there was a key, we were trying all combinations, but we did not try it with that one. And he said, there's weird wiring that we can see in the schematics that lead up to the desk. And as soon as he said that, light bulbs went off on all our heads, and we're like, push the button, go to the desk, quick.
Yeah, so after the room opened and during play testing, we
Yeah.
were sitting there with the proctors. It's also a training time, right? And this was the most miserable time for the proctors, I just know it, because they're sitting here with the founders of the company, leering over their shoulders with headphones on, listening, because we mic up the rooms and everything, so we have a security system with cameras all over the place, so we can see and hear them, and they don't always think we can hear them. And so we were telling them what to say and then giving them those little nudges and say, I don't know, because they're a character also.
Mhm.
So they're a character in the story, they're your handler, and they don't know everything. So they don't know what's in the other room, they don't know what's, like all of the twists and turns, they learn it with you, so they're going through it with you, which is a much more organic hint system. What's our time?
We've got a little bit of time.
Good.
So one of the things for LARP, like you said, like for proctors and having like, is it an out of character thing? Is it an in character thing? Does it help with immersion? With LARP, it's super easy. You have an NPC there who can give them direction or give them clues or have a bunch of information, or they can have a skill that they can use that would give them information. Like, oh, I used my research skill and I researched how to solve this puzzle, and now I know. Like I was handed the out of box instructions, right? Like, or whatever, because they either threw a skill at it because that's what the game calls for, or the game there's an NPC that's there to facilitate them. I went to an escape room here in Austin, actually, really, I think it's just around the corner. That it wasn't Austin Escape Room, but it was
Austin Panic Room.
maybe it was Austin Panic Room.
Puzzle in Austin.
Puzzle, it was, yeah.
Yeah,
I-
all right.
One of those.
So,
We'll talk about branding
so,
another day.
yeah, you guys, seriously.
Yeah.
So you guys may have, I don't know how many of the other puzzle rooms you guys have checked out.
We played one.
Yeah.
Oh.
But the scenario was we were going down in a subway tunnel, and there was an NPC in there. So the proctor was an in-character bum, right? And he was there, and he was our proctor. But and we left with we came in with the, holy crap, their set was amazing, their setup was amazing, their props were amazing. I was completely wowed by everything they had. They had an actual train car, like a subway car, in their studio. They had it look like one of the rooms was completely gutted and it looked like a subway station, right? It was amazing. We walked in and we were like, this is gonna be good. And there were word puzzles, and there were thinking puzzles, and there was a thing where we were supposed to use the phone to call someone, and we didn't realize we were supposed to use the phone to call someone, so we didn't figure it out. And and there was a binary puzzle with a switchboard, and we didn't wind up figuring that out either. But they had all these things and were super cool. But their NPC, their proctor, their scenario facilitator, his job literally was to stand in there and talk to us and distract us from solving puzzles. Had he not been in there, we probably would have solved it in about 30 minutes. Legitimately, if no one had been in there and we just sat down and we had realized we could use our cell phone, we might have sat for 30 minutes going, well, there's this one thing we can't figure out what it does, right? Until we figure out, oh yeah, cell phone. But 30 minutes tops to solve all the puzzles in that room. And we didn't finish it partially because this dude, he wasn't a facilitator, he was a defacilitator.
It's a distraction.
He was there literally as a distraction. He didn't give us hints, he didn't give us clues.
Now, did he actually move props that y'all needed away from where they were required for you
He
guys?
did not do that. He didn't do that to us. But he
Yeah.
did, like, we would be like, hey, can you help us with this? And he's like, I sure can if you'll like sing a song for me. And then people would sing a song for him and he'd be like, that wasn't a very long song, sing me a different song, that takes longer. And then they'd sing another song that took
He's
longer.
basically a time sink.
Yeah, and then they'd be like, all right, answer the question, I don't know.
How did it make you feel?
It was very frustrating. And it was frustrating at the very end when it occurred, it wasn't until the very end, because I was like, yeah, I'm LARPing, I'm in this, and this is cool, and you know, he's gonna give us clues through, you know, this roundabout way. It wasn't until the very end when I realized he didn't give us any clues, not a single one. He did not help us at all. He only hindered us.
So we
And it was a very huge letdown. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, I don't ever wanna go back to
Because
this place again.
the scenario, the place was really cool, so we've heard stories, right? We didn't actually do that one.
I have, yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, you told me that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, yeah, but here's the thing that strikes me about that story right there. We specifically look for, in our rooms, and our proctors are trained specifically, and now every LARP that I run in the future is gonna be, people are gonna be trained to do this. Watch for frustration,
Yeah.
because frustration is not fun,
Yeah.
right? There's, I'm gonna refer to this probably till the day I die, it's called, it's called flow, right? Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist, right? He has a theory, he authored this theory of flow. And you have a y-axis and an x-axis, and here you have skill, and here you have challenge, right? And then there's a 1x line that goes up, right? That's your flow channel that you want to stay in. Down here is boredom. You have a huge amount of skill, no challenge. Up here is anxiety. You have a huge amount of challenge, no skill. So you want to avoid either of those extremes, as with many things, and that's where frustration is bred from. So we get a lot of people who are they're frustrated because they don't feel like they can solve anything, and we have limited ability to interact once we set them loose in the room, right? Or with LARP, once you cut people loose after lay-on, there's very little that you can do. Like, people have tried, and they are horrible failures usually when it's like, oh, the sky lights up and all this, okay, yeah, but that's everybody who can hear you within a 20-foot radius, and like, that guy way over there has no idea what you just said. So he doesn't know that this big world ending event is actually happening, right? So we don't have any interactivity like that, just spread throughout everyone unless it's like predetermined and everyone knows it's gonna happen. So anyways, point being, you have to figure out how to avoid that frustration with and you need to be able to communicate with people
Yeah.
solidly.
First year at Quest Night, we had it too difficult. There was a
Yeah.
win-lose,
Yeah.
and almost 40% failed
Yep.
the mission. And luckily, most people who went through and failed were friends of mine
Yeah.
who drank too much.
Yeah.
But I had to tailor the game to where only about 5 to 10%. You have to leave it possible to fail.
Yep.
But nobody wants to pay next year for something they don't feel good about.
Right.
With the right failure percentage, and this is what where I vehemently disagree with a lot of escape rooms, honestly, and I think we both do,
Yeah.
is with the right fail percentage, you go, yep, I earned that.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
screwed up, I did
Yeah.
it wrong.
Yeah.
What is your failure percentage? What is Perplexium's failure percentage?
We don't have.
Yeah,
We don't exercise, but what it really is we'll tell you, yeah, so we don't record it, we don't have a timer,
Oh.
we have like a clock, but we don't tell everyone their time and take their picture with it at the very end of the
Oh,
room,
yeah.
because that's not what it's,
It's not
what we want to
about-
emphasize.
It was-
So experience.
We would prefer that
Yeah.
everyone go through with, you know, a correct amount of frustration, and if
Barely pass every time.
yeah, and if they're skilled, maybe they get done quicker, and if they're not skilled, maybe they get
Well,
more hints from the prop.
Yeah, so we have a failure path, but it is not at a point where you don't see the whole room, right?
Yeah,
If you don't see the whole room, we failed somewhere,
What's
right?
it's literally the last
Yeah,
10 seconds of the room you
Yeah.
can fail.
Right, that thing.
Yeah.
But at least you've played the whole room, you've seen everything there's to see, and you know that you had to earn that win at the very end.
Basically, you have to be stupid at Quest Night to really fail. You have to almost be screwing around so much,
Which is where you're
like
like,
my
okay,
senior year in high school, that you're just gonna fail.
So that actually brings up that specific question about failure is in the LARP scenario, especially if the puzzle you have to solve is contingent part of the plot. You know, I always get this question. My husband's this great, you know, he's a great sounding board. And I always get this question from him when I'm like, okay, players are gonna do this. It's gonna be so cool. They're gonna have to solve this thing. And he's like, cool, what happens if they can't?
Yeah, good husband.
That's it.
He's like, that's cool. What happens if they can't?
You have to have that person.
What happens if they spend 12 hours and they're just like, I give up, and they can't solve your plot?
Yeah, we've had people running games for us which we've played in games together and stuff too. And it's like, yeah, you know, they're like, oh, well, then they just don't do it. And they're like the jerk GM.
Well,
but that doesn't always work when you like, you know.
The way we have solved that in our LARPs is if you solve the if you do not solve the puzzle, a bad thing happens. If you solve the puzzle, a less bad thing happens.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things, especially because, you know, one of the questions, especially, you know, specifically for Reclaiming Earth, but also some of the one-shot LARPs I'm designing, is that these games are very investigation oriented. They're very investigation focused, and you know, in Puzzle Room, at its basis level, it is investigation. You're pulling things out, you're looking for keys, you're looking for puzzle pieces, you're looking for clues, and if you miss something, if you pull out the drawer and you don't see anything in it, and you forget to flip it upside down and there's a key taped to the bottom of it, and then you put the drawer back in because you didn't see anything inside of it, and then you forget about the drawer because I already checked that. And then for like the next 10 minutes, you're like, we need a key!
Yeah.
We can't find the key! And even the proctor's like, well, they might be hidden in a drawer. And they're like, I checked the drawer! Right? Like, they cannot continue until the key is found. And so
that's a huge amount of frustration.
It's
and you have
frustration.
to be able to get past that
right.
through the story so it's not jarring, right?
Right, so that for Puzzle Room, you gotta be able to get through it so it's not jarring, and it's like, oh my god, I can't find the key, where is it? And so in investigation, especially if the ultimate goal of an investigation game is to get information, right? Like a gumshoe style game, I don't know if any of you guys are tabletop players, but there's a game system called Gumshoe, and it's got some really great skins on it, like there's a vampire detective game called Knights Black Agents, there's a mutant, like, kind of ex-mini noir game called Mutant City Blues. There's a like a Cthulhu game. There's a Call of Cthulhu, like Mask Cthulhu style investigation game, and it's all about investigation. And all of those games have this common theme. Like your vampire detectives, your investigation is to find the answer to a problem, right? Who killed Jimmy? Well, solving all the clues, finding all the puzzles, doing all the things answers the question, who killed Jimmy? If you can't find out who killed Jimmy, you feel like a failure, and your game isn't very fun. And so if the ultimate goal is to answer a question or find out a bit of information or reveal a larger truth in the story, information isn't just a secret to be learned if they can find it correctly. It is actually a facilitator of having fun. And so, so just like in an escape room, finding that key isn't just a mechanical way to open the lock. It is also a facilitator to continuing in the puzzle room and solving and eventually ending the story and having this great thing happen. And so one of the really cool things that like Gumshoe and some other tabletop style games do is another good one that's investigation based is called Chill. Is you're going to investigate a thing. You have a random chance of success. You roll a die. On a failure, you get some information. On a success, you get better information. On a better success, you get really good information.
Which keeps things moving forward.
Everything is moving forward. So your chance of failure is actually just not as good clues.
Just limiting your success.
Right. It is. You're still gonna, or maybe you get a red herring instead. So from a from a LARP perspective and a puzzle room perspective, it's a lot harder to build in automatic success to, I opened the drawer, I looked for the key, I didn't see it, I forgot to flip the drawer over, it's taped to the bottom, I can't believe I didn't do that. Like, how do you build in that inherent success? It's better success, right? Maybe if you flip the drawer over, you get the key, but if you open the drawer, there's a clue about the fact that there may be a key taped under, right? So I did the thing, and there's a clue there. It's not all the information I need, but it's better than nothing. And it may move me forward in the correct direction.
We actually have another workaround for that, for the partial success.
Yeah.
Because we built a permanent set,
Mhm.
we have hardwired overrides to the control room. So if they can't figure out how to open this door,
It may
gate,
just pop
lock,
open.
we can have
I can
them
do that.
communicate with the proctor, be like, yeah, I'm your handler, and I'm gonna try to hack the system, or blow some fuses, or cause a blackout.
Right.
Keep
This
it in
will open.
story, keep it
Right.
in story.
Yeah,
And-
exactly, so
right.
we keep everything.
And that they don't even have to know that they missed a clue.
Right,
And so they can have a really good game,
They
even
feel
with
that-
us
They feel that
thinking
moment.
out of that.
right, and so
Yeah, and
that's,
electronics help a lot with that, but that's
I'm sorry, I love it, you're just a GM fudging the roll.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it,
no,
that's
it's
exactly
That's
what
really
and-
what you're doing.
Because
Well, right.
all we're doing is saying,
Just
like,
enjoy the game.
well, so that brings to light another thing. I'm going to go really quickly into this. Electronics have helped us so
Oh my
much
God,
in
yeah.
that because when you can do
Yeah.
right? You can do lots of things you wouldn't be able to otherwise, and that's one of the best things about doing an escape room that's a permanent installation.
yes,
We spent so much time doing live action role playing games and doing these big orchestrations and trying to figure out how all this is going to work
Yep.
for 20 minutes
Yep.
of somebody's time,
Yep.
and then it's gone forever,
yep,
right?
that's my life.
Yeah, that's,
That's my life. And, so one of the things that I do, like you guys have a permanent installation and you push people through. For me, I try to make my puzzle a little more simplistic. I'm not gonna spend hours and hours and hours and hours designing this like lock and key and lock and key and lock and key and lock and key, and there's a wall and then a control panel and all this, and I like, I can't make them that complicated because it's a one and done.
Well, and the expense.
And it's expensive, right? If
Expensive.
I have to spend more than like $10 on an individual puzzle, like I can't do it because I've got like 50
and
of
that's
them.
that's
and
also as a result of your customer base,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
because you've got people who are going to come back to your thing in
Right, and
epic
I can't-
style deal,
right.
whereas we get the average Joe who comes in once
Right.
and goes out and hopefully tells everyone they know,
Right.
right? But so we have to tune a lot more,
Mhm.
where you have to iterate a lot more.
Yes, exactly.
And we've done like the iteration aspect of it too, and now we're like the tuning is like, but if you can do something that you tune
Yeah,
and reuse, if it's
Yep.
like this thing, they get really good at using this particular communication to the other
Yep.
plane device that they
Yeah.
find occasionally or something like that.
right.
But yeah, that's,
Yeah, there's ways also, there's certain, like a cryptogram. This is why I love cryptograms, because you can utilize the same cryptogram, the same code key,
Yep.
multiple times. And if they've solved it once, when you go to do it again, either A, maybe those people haven't solved it before. So could different people interacting, because that is a good thing with LARP, is that, unless your game is really small, two people may be working on this puzzle, and then you may be able to toss it into a different plot that appeals to different players, and so maybe different players are solving that exact same puzzle and have no idea that other people last week, this was the same puzzle they had to solve, because it just looks like a number puzzle.
yeah.
Oh, question?
No, I was going to comment on cryptograms
Yeah.
and LARP. One of the things we found in our LARPs with cryptograms was it was fun to break them, but then once you have broken them, if you had an entire encoded document, it was less fun to decode it, because at that point you're doing work and you're not interacting with other people.
Right. I would highly recommend to some of you who haven't looked into that before, take Cryptography 101. It's free online course taught by really intelligent people, and in that you learn things like the Caesar cipher and the Vignette cipher and those sorts of things. And we figured out really fast that like even in self-play testing, that it was just lame to do longer than a couple sentences.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you're just doing and just hammering, and it's
Yeah.
like, I got out of my desk job to come do a desk job at a
Yeah,
Larp, right?
yeah.
And
A sentence.
so that's the kind of tuning and balancing thing
Yeah.
and also it's like the complexity of it, people will, this is what I like about Larp actually, is the average person will probably not do anything more complicated than a Caesar cipher. It's actually really hard to make sure that the average person can do a Caesar cipher because you give them the wheels and then you just turn the wheel and it's written on the back when you go to the wheel and they still won't necessarily figure it out. But then with LARPers, you probably have some cryptography experts in the crowd, right?
In our LARPs, we have had to put in incredibly complex, almost conlangs in order to do this.
Yeah.
In your thing,
Yeah.
it was, as far as I know, you solved it just sitting there and typing.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna, spoiler
You
alert.
just shift, right? Yeah.
Spoiler alert, Reclaiming Earth Tonight has a cryptogram, and I'm pretty certain, no, it has a cryptogram, and I'm pretty terrified that people won't be able to solve it.
Ours is just usually
But
a
it's a side
sentence,
plot
and what
and
you
how
have to
to do it.
cryptogram
Yeah,
is the
I
missing word in the sentence.
Oh,
Yeah,
Because we found that too, people were spending too much time actually breaking it, which was fun, but then they had to decipher the entire freaking document, so we would do one key sentence somewhere, but the word was mushed up or worked
Yeah.
out.
And it goes straight back into frustration, right?
Yes.
Like
Frustration.
It's working with frustration and making sure that nobody is they're doing something that they feel is productive and fun, that's not gonna you're not just sitting there punching at it. How are you doing?
Grinding, no one wants to grind.
No one
It's
wants
College,
grinding.
College of Wizardry had a brilliant cryptogram in that they published a textbook for all the players. And whenever they had words that you weren't supposed to use, like the dark arts, dark arts was translated into a code. So it was a cipher.
Okay.
But if you looked carefully as you were flipping through the book, and it wasn't called out or anything, you would notice that people had made notes in the margins in this cipher.
Yeah.
So you had to go through the entire thing and find the words you knew to be able to figure out the
break.
cipher to then
Love
break
it.
the cryptogram, because
That's
you're like,
very-
is this a
that's
Q
very
or a
clever.
J, or am I
Yeah.
missing an
That's-
M? Like,
that's
you
very
you
clever.
had
I
to
like
you had to
that.
piece it all together.
That's
And,
awesome.
and of
That's
course,
very
that played out over 3 days, so you had time
You have plenty of
in your
time.
downtime. Like you're in a class, it's
Funnel
boring.
with it.
You
Yeah.
can flip through the textbook and be looking for more of
Yeah,
these to figure out.
I like that.
There's a cool, I have to give props to her, and she's not even here this weekend. Anastasia Marston has been doing, for Dystopia Rising, we use a little bit of technology in that LARP, and so there's a radio broadcast, and so she's been sending out cryptograms over a YouTube channel that is specifically for the radio broadcasts, and so it's amazing because, they make it all staticky sounding, like it's
Yeah.
coming through an old radio, and it's like number, there's no spaces. And then there's like, and then there's
Yeah.
And then there's
Planetfall
like,
did one.
and then there's like some Morse code,
Yeah.
like, tossed in, and then number, and
It's
it's
a numbers
so
channel.
good. So good, yeah, it's a
actually
numbers
similar
channel,
to
and
that,
it's so good.
Planetfall did a broadcast at one point, which I loved, and I wanted to
Why don't
solve
we
this,
do
because
more?
Matt threw that
We
in.
need more.
I know, yeah.
Also,
But
no more
what it
3D
was
Minesweeper.
It was, no more 3D
So-
Minesweeper.
so-
Well, some, but
Okay,
not
so-
that one.
Okay, so what happened was, we had 3D Minesweeper to break a genetics code
Yeah.
for the spiders that we had. And, they didn't realize how high the setting was, because they were
Yeah.
playing it. So, it took like 6 hours for someone to finally break it.
It was really long. I'm just like, Tyler's a trooper.
No, it was,
Yeah.
the girl Francis.
Oh, she did.
It was the
Well,
girl
credit
that-
where it's due, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Francis.
Tyler, then me, then Francis, and then Francis was like, I got this. And she just sat there for like 3 hours.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's
Well-
why you can't play test your own puzzles. You've got to
Yeah,
do
you
it.
gotta have
Yes,
other
exactly.
people do
Well,
that.
because I've been playing Minesweeper forever.
Mhm.
And so I looked at this and I'm like, oh yeah, I got this,
I know this.
I know this is fine. But it didn't exactly go over like that. And that was
It
like,
never does.
and that was a big failure where I was just like, I'm not doing that like that ever again, and I can't do that. Because that was really frustrating to
Okay.
deal with, right?
So really quickly, we've got like 15 minutes left, is it?
No, we've got
No.
10.
13.
13.
Yeah.
Okay.
Split the difference. We've got like 13 minutes left. One of the things that I know I wanted to talk about, or you actually mentioned, is the general public and the normalization of LARP through escape rooms. and how essentially how bringing those intersections together, and I have some ideas about it, but I first want you to talk a little bit about how or you guys to talk about how your experiment, I want to call it that, of like kind of getting people LARPing into your rooms. How is that going?
So our original plan is, let's make this as much of a LARP as possible, but we can only offer the experience. We cannot force anyone to pick up the costume, to play the character, to get into it, but we will. Our proctor will stand by their role the whole time, and then we try to make the puzzles and the setting reinforce all of the LARP elements the whole time. And by the end, even if people walk in being like, oh, I'm playing an escape room, I'm gonna go for the high score, by the time they're done, they actually do get into it, and they're like, yay, we're spies. Yeah,
They
we
walk
just
out.
did the thing. We saved the world.
You have to be, I think that's one of the bigger intersections too, and I'm glad you brought this one up, is because this is where you can invite people into the magic circle. You cannot push people into the magic circle.
You can lead people to the magic circle,
Yes.
but you cannot make them be
Drink
magical.
from
They will not, yeah, drink
Well,
milk.
yeah.
They will not, they will be more resistant if
Yeah.
you
Trying to
try
push
to
them
push
in.
them into it. So all we do is we invite them to it, right?
Yeah.
Just like
And
that.
it helps when there's a large group of people. One person might be super interested in the role, the character, the LARP aspect of it. Everyone else is just tagging along because it's something to do on a Friday.
Right.
Yeah.
But because their friend is the one bringing them in,
Right.
they can actually get involved
And they'll do
and
that.
have a lot of fun, more fun.
So I'm kinda, and I'm gonna like step away from escape room specifically to talk a little bit about like your scenario. So you guys talk about like you have a spy scenario, you have like kind of a role, like a real world role that like, you know, spy movies are, you know, baller. People love going to spy movies. They love going to, you know, kind of superhero, like, you know, superhero movies are really big right now. And one of the escape rooms I did was like there was a mad scientist, and we had to try to figure out like, you know, essentially he had locked it. We're like superheroes, or we're heroes, maybe not super, but we're heroes. And the premise is that we're supposed to be trying to figure out how to get out of this room because he locked us in. But while we're in here, we have the opportunity to find out what his nefarious plan is. And we could not care about his nefarious plan at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Or we could totally care about his nefarious plan and be like, yes, now we know how to thwart him, and we have escaped this room, and you will not get us. And it just really depends, and like you said, there's buy-in. But, you know, but then, you know, how well would the elf and orc version of this game go? Where your elves and the orcs have captured you, and you must find out where the orcs are keeping the, you know, the magical wand of magic-y, right? So people have
Magic-y wand.
the magic-y magic, yeah. I've got some
Making
bold
notes.
nice
Making
words
notes.
here. I am just a
Making
font
notes. I'm
of
trying to pick on you.
It is magic, okay? So there's a bit of like, you know, the general populace have things that are popular, and those things will sell them. Where there's a giant subsection of, you know, LARPing that is like vampires and fantasy and, you know, and zombies, and, you know, the zombie right now is pretty big everywhere. And vampire is decently, you know, people are still riding on the coattails of stupid Twilight and stuff. So
That shall not be named.
yeah. So vampire scenarios are still they still have a decent, you know, traction.
I think what you're getting to that I really like is resonant themes, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so if you said to somebody, all right, so you're an elf. Here's some ear tips. We're gonna glue these to your ear.
You're gonna turn around and walk
We would
out.
be lynched. I think.
Yeah.
They would walk straight out. I think.
Yeah,
But-
they would walk straight out.
But there are ways of doing that, getting to that resonant theme without
I-
the ask or
Forcing
something
it.
like
Yeah,
that, right?
and I think
Right, yeah.
that, you know, and there are certain things I think that definitely work well, and especially for LARPs, you know, we're already seeing it with like Village of Wizardry. You know, when people in the US found out that there are people in Poland going to a castle for a weekend, pretending to be Harry Potter. They flipped their effing lids.
Yeah.
They literally, there was a BuzzFeed article about it.
Yep.
There was a HuffPost article about it.
MTV.
There was an MTV article about, MTV
My
article
hobby
about
was
it.
on MTV, are you freaking
Yes.
kidding me?
Yes.
I used to not be able to say it out loud.
Right, and
And
then
now-
MTV's talking about how these really cool people are going into a really cool castle in Poland and pretending Harry Potter world, and everybody is just like, oh my god, it's the best thing ever. And it's because, surprise, it's a resonant theme. It is a theme that people were just like, Harry Potter, I don't know about this role-playing stuff, but Harry Potter, I'm gonna be a wizard, oh my god!
Just something they're comfortable with.
It's something,
Familiar.
it's
Yeah,
something to have a
exactly.
fandom for.
I'm working with, in small ways, the New World Magic School of people,
Right.
and there are so many people who are playing that.
Never
Just
LARPed
because
before.
never LARPed before,
The first
just because
run.
it's Harry
Yeah.
Potter.
I'll see you
If you're in
there.
the first one, I will see you there.
I'm in second run.
Second run.
Second run. Anyway, but that is a resonant theme, right? That's something that, people don't just recognize it, but they have a deep love of it. So if I told you, there's also one of these going on, which I was like, well, I don't want to go on this thing. Some people rented out a battleship. They have some lightsabers, and they're running an effing Star Wars LARP.
Wait, is that something here?
It's in the U.S.
I don't care what's happening, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Just tell me what it is.
So you're not talking about Monitor
I decided
Celestial,
that.
the Swedish one.
Monitor
No,
Celestial
no, I'm not
was-
talking
that
about the
was
Swedish
one.
one. There's one in the U.S.
Right.
And I was like, I want to go to this because Star Wars. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I know,
It's a
it's
Facebook
fine.
thing. I saw it on
It's
Facebook, but it's like Star Wars LARP. Oh my god! On a battleship. Oh
Did
my
you
god!
have a thing that you want to say?
Oh, yeah, well,
This is
I
good
think
for
I
you.
wanted-
it was mine though.
I know, but
He
this
had
is
his
good
thing.
for you.
yeah, but you bring up a great topic, and I'll tell you guys what I do later with all this
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
But we've all seen LARP. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry that does LARPing almost every single day, but no one ever conflates it with LARP, which is the Disney World,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or and Universal Studios, which and this is just shocking to me. I just wanted to share my opinion with you guys.
Yeah.
It's like one day somebody's like, "What if we sell Avengers costumes?"
Yeah.
What if and Universal
Kids-
Studios is like, "What if we let them pretend they're Harry Potter?"
Yeah.
And it's multi-billion, and the sales were like this, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
of everything.
They couldn't sell fast.
But now,
Yeah,
and now entertainment's evolving
Yeah.
Yeah.
to accept escape room. Imagine if you opened that crap in 1990.
Oh no.
No, everybody's like,
No, but it
you're
would've
gonna do what?
been
Yeah.
You know what?
annihilated.
It would have been an
Which
island.
is
Absolutely.
fascinating. I just thought I'd bring that.
No, it's
Well,
it's
actually,
absolutely a thing.
There are a lot of
Yeah.
corollaries with escape rooms and laser tag.
Yes.
Oh, I know. I'm figuring.
And
it out.
haunted houses.
And
If
haunted
you watch
houses.
Haunted House
Yes,
Yes,
Industry,
absolutely
Those are
haunted
the-
houses.
and haunted
yeah.
houses.
And haunted houses. Yeah.
people are getting less enthused about watching
And
the
being-
experience
and
they
instead
want and being
being-
able to
Yeah.
physically go out and do, even if it's just minor in a veneer,
Yeah.
they want to swing the lightsaber.
Well, we
They want
figured
to
out.
ride the Harry Potter ride. They want to be involved in what they love.
I got a
It's
comment.
why, it's why since the 70s, really quickly, it's why since the 70s, murder, mystery, dinner things have
Yeah.
always had a place.
Yes.
Well, exact quote I heard from when I was with the Entertainment Association guys. They said, everybody, like, what would you rather do? Watch Luke Skywalker or be Luke Skywalker, right? It's just as clear as
Well, it's weird because there is also sports fans, right? But and this has been thrown in my face a few times. But there's sports fans and there's people who just watch football. They do not watch
Yeah.
football.
Yeah.
They don't watch. They play fantasy football, which we'll get into LARPing later with that.
Yeah.
And they feel what's going on with those guys, and they go and they play in the backyard, and
Yep.
it's very.
They dress up in
interactive.
odd costumes.
They dress
They dress
up
in
Go to
odd
the show.
costumes.
I'm sorry, fantasy football is D&D for jocks.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I'm sorry.
Remember when our team won last week?
Oh, I loved it when my team won.
No, no,
Did you
no,
see
no, no,
that
I'm sorry.
play?
No,
Ours is. Remember when we won last week? You
Yeah.
didn't win shit, bro.
Yeah,
exactly.
You were
Yeah.
Cheetos in the back there.
But we won!
We
It
won.
was amazing.
Yeah.
That play that my favorite player made, like, oh my
Yeah.
god, did you see that when he did that?
Yeah, yeah.
That's actually another
Yelling at
good
TV.
thing is that it has a lot of aspects of it.
2 minutes to wrap up.
Yeah.
2 minutes to wrap up. No, wait, questions are really important. Does anybody have